The wind cut through the streets of downtown Chicago like a sharpened blade, slicing through alleyways and lifting loose scraps of newspaper into the air. Snowflakes drifted silently from a slate-gray sky, disappearing as they melted into the fractured pavement below. On the corner of 12th and Monroe, beside a shuttered bakery, a boy huddled against a rusted dumpster, his knees drawn tightly to his chest, his breath rising in ragged clouds. Noah was 13 years old, but the city had aged him in ways no number could measure. His hoodie was threadbare, its once black color now faded to the dull gray of forgotten things. He clutched a thin cotton blanket stiff with frost, the edges curling with dirt. His lips were cracked, his hands were numb. His stomach groaned quietly, but he had long since stopped expecting food to show up. The day before, he'd searched every trash bin in a 5-block radius, half-eaten sandwiches, ketchup packets, anything. He found nothing. And in a city of millions, not one pair of eyes had really seen him. To most, Noah was invisible. He had grown used to the way people looked past him, the way they crossed the street without glancing his way, as if he were just another piece of urban debris. He stopped trying to make himself noticed. He made himself small, quiet. Just survive the night, he whispered to himself. Just make it until morning. Then, through the bitter wind, a sound broke the silence. A soft, broken whimper. Noah stiffened. For a moment he thought the cold had played tricks on his ears. But there it was again. Fragile, close. He lifted his head and turned toward the alley. Under the weak flicker of a street lamp, something moved. It looked like a pile of trash at first. Dark, shapeless. But then it shifted, shivered. Noah leaned forward. His heart slowed. It was a dog, a German shepherd, gaunt, trembling, barely upright. Its coat was a mess of matted fur and grime, patchy and wet from the snow. Ribs protruded from beneath the thinning strands. One paw was curled beneath its body at a painful angle. But it wasn't the dog's condition that stopped Noah. It was its eyes. They weren't wild or afraid. They were hollow, familiar. The kind of emptiness Noah saw when he passed shattered windows, when he stared too long into puddles on the Gyam sidewalk. Loneliness looked back at him. He dragged his blanket forward across the ice-cold ground. "Hey, boy," he whispered, voice hoarse from cold and silence. The dog didn't run. It didn't bark. It just lay there watching him. "You're freezing," Noah murmured. "Me too." He peeled the blanket from his shoulders and draped it over the dog. Instantly, the night bit into his skin, but he didn't pull back. The dog shivered once, then settled under the thin fabric. Noah reached out a shaking hand and touched its side, like ice. But the dog didn't move away. It shifted slightly toward him. "You're not going to make it out here alone," Noah whispered. "And I'm not either." And just like that, in a forgotten alley under a forgotten sky, two broken souls found warmth in each other. The first rays of morning stretched across the icy skyline like hesitant fingers, touching rooftops and glinting off frozen gutters. The snow had stopped sometime before dawn, but the chill remained, sharp and biting. In the alley beside the boarded-up bakery, beneath a tattered blanket crusted with frost, two shapes lay curled together, still, silent, alive. Noah stirred first. He blinked slowly, his back aching from the unyielding concrete. His limbs felt stiff, almost fused with cold. But there was something else, a weight, warm, solid, pressed against his side. He turned his head. Ranger was still there. The German shepherd hadn't left. The night before, Noah had expected the dog to vanish by morning, like a dream evaporating with daylight. But here he was, his thin body curled tightly, breathing slow and steady. His eyes blinked open lazily as Noah moved, and for a second, they just looked at each other. "Morning," Noah whispered, his voice scratchy but stronger. He reached out and ran trembling fingers through the dog's fur. It was still filthy, stiff with dirt and dried blood, but beneath it there was life. Heat. Noah smiled faintly. Still here, he murmured. He sat up slowly, wincing as pain shot through his shoulders and spine. The blanket slipped off them both, cracking at the bar, edges from frozen moisture. He pulled it tight around himself, then looked down at Ranger, who was struggling to stand. Easy, Noah said softly. The dog's legs trembled, especially the injured one, but after a few seconds he rose. Barely. He limped forward a step, then stopped, pressing close to Noah's side. The boy looked down at him, at the dull gold of his eyes and the twitch of his ears. "We need food," Noah said, unsure if he was speaking to himself or the dog. "Both of us." Together, they began to walk. The city was waking. Doors creaked, open. Delivery trucks beeped as they reversed. Commuters marched toward train stations bundled in coats and scarves, faces buried in phones. No one noticed the boy and the dog moving through the shadows. Noah kept his head low, his eyes scanning curbs and garbage bins, doorsteps and alleyways. Ranger stayed close, limping but determined, his nose twitching as he sniffed at the remains of discarded meals. They searched for over an hour. Empty wrappers, coffee cups, nothing worth chewing. Finally, near a row of dumpsters behind a strip mall, they found it, a takeout container, half a sandwich still inside, mold at the edges, but the middle was intact. Noah didn't hesitate. He tore it in two and gave the larger half to Ranger. The dog devoured it, licking his fingers afterward as if to say thanks. Noah chewed slowly, the bread cold and soggy in his mouth, but it was enough to take the edge off, for now. By late morning, they had drifted toward a small plaza near a coffee shop. People passed quickly, business suits, parents with strollers, college students with earbuds. Noah sat by a lamppost and pulled the blanket over them both. Ranger lay at his side, his body a silent shield against the wind. Noah's fingers hovered over his lap, where once there had been a guitar case. Long gone now, probably sold or stolen. But he remembered the feeling of it. The weight, the strings. He remembered the sound. He closed his eyes and began to sing. The notes were soft at first, barely there. A lullaby. A song his mother used to hum as she tucked him in, back when life was still whole. The melody cracked in places, his voice dry, strained, but it was honest, raw. Ranger remained still beside him, ears perked, eyes alert. The dog didn't bark or move. He listened, and slowly, people began to stop. Not many, just a few at first. A young woman with coffee, a man in a suit who paused mid-step. A little girl tugged at her mother's coat and pointed at Ranger, her eyes wide. Noah kept singing. Not loudly, not with the showmanship of a performer, but with the fragile, unwavering truth of someone who had been through fire and had somehow come out the other side, still burning. The notes floated above the sidewalk, weaving through conversations and footsteps, settling into hearts. Ranger didn't flinch. He let it happen, his presence calm, steady, like a lighthouse in a storm. The little girl approached. Ranger lifted his head and let out a soft, almost questioning whine. It wasn't a cry for help. It was a greeting. The girl smiled. Her mother knelt beside her, watching silently. A dollar bill fluttered down onto the ground in front of Noah. He blinked, mid-song. "Thank you," he whispered. More followed. Coins, bills, a gentle pat on Ranger's head from a nurse on her lunch break. A compliment from an older man in a tweed jacket. For the first time in what felt like forever, Noah wasn't invisible. People didn't look away. They looked, not just at him, at Ranger. The dog didn't beg. He didn't move. He simply watched. And in that stillness, people stopped. They saw something rare. A boy and a dog who had nothing, and yet gave everything, to each other. A woman in a gray wool coat lingered the longest. She stood back, watching. Her gaze was fixed not on Noah, but on Ranger. Her eyes shimmered with something Noah couldn't place. When the song ended, she stepped forward. "That is quite a dog," she said. Noah nodded, hand resting gently on Ranger's back. "Found him. Last night," he said. "Or maybe he found me." The woman smiled faintly. He looks like someone I knew. And in that moment, the morning that had started with empty bellies and frozen hands became something else entirely. She didn't look like someone who belonged on the street, not with that tailored gray coat, the silk scarf at her neck, the careful way she stood as if each movement was measured. But she didn't walk away either. She stayed, studying the boy and the dog with quiet intent. When Noah met her eyes, she didn't flinch or turn. She simply nodded as if she understood something unspoken. "That's quite a dog," she repeated gently. Noah shifted his weight. Ranger leaned against his leg, protective but calm. Noah moved his hand over the dog's back in a slow, grounding motion. "Found him last night," he said. "Or maybe he found me." She crouched slightly, careful not to startle the dog. Her gaze stayed fixed on Ranger. "He looks like someone I used to know," she said, almost to herself. "Years ago, I trained German shepherds, search and rescue dogs. I worked with the department in Queens." Noah tensed. "One of my best dogs was stolen during a break-in," she added. "We never found him." Her voice didn't accuse. There was no anger. Just a story carried carefully, like a fragile object kept too long in the dark. Noah didn't know why, but his heart pounded. He reached instinctively toward Ranger, resting a protective hand along his side. "He's mine now." The woman held up her hands. "I believe you," she said, "and from the way he looks at you, I'd say he agrees." Ranger didn't growl. He didn't move away. He simply watched her, curious but relaxed. "What's his name?" she asked. "I call him Ranger," she smiled. "A good name." They stood in silence for a moment as the plaza churned quietly around them. Footsteps, coffee orders, street noise. For a moment, it felt like none of it mattered. Then the woman gestured toward the coffee shop behind her. "Have you had lunch?" Noah hesitated. Every instinct inside him resisted. He hated charity. He hated the sting of being pitied. But he also hadn't had a real meal in days, and the ache in his stomach wouldn't let him lie. "No," he said. "Come with me," she said. "You and Ranger. I won't ask questions. I just want to share something warm." Noah looked down at the dog, who stared back up at him. His ears twitched, but he didn't move. That was his way of agreeing. So they followed her inside. The coffee shop was warm and smelled of cinnamon and roasted beans. Noah hovered near the entrance, unsure, but the woman guided them to a small corner table near the window. She placed an order: soup and sandwiches for two, a bowl of plain chicken for the dog. No one stared. No one questioned. Noah tried to keep his hands from shaking as he ate. His fingers fumbled with the spoon, the bread. His body betrayed the hunger he tried to hide. The woman didn't comment. She simply watched him with soft eyes, patient. After a while, she said, "My name is Evelyn." Noah looked up. He nodded, chewing. "I run a training and rehab facility for working dogs just north of the city," she continued. "We also foster kids who age out of the system. Give them something stable while they figure things out." Noah blinked. He stopped chewing. "Why are you telling me this?" She set her coffee cup down and looked at him squarely. "Because I think you belong. Somewhere that sees you." He glanced down at Ranger, who was curled under the table, licking the last of the chicken from the bowl. Then he looked back at Evelyn. "I don't know if I do," he said. "You don't have to know," she replied. "You just have to try." It wasn't a pitch. It wasn't a rescue mission. It was an invitation. Still wary, still unsure, Noah followed her out of the coffee shop when lunch was done. She led them to a small van parked nearby. It didn't have tinted windows or flashy logos, just a modest decal on the side. "Hearthstone Animal and Youth Center. Ranger can sit in the back with you," she said. Noah hesitated only a second before opening the door. The drive was quiet. Snow still lined the streets, but the clouds were beginning to part, revealing strips of cold blue sky. Evelyn didn't speak much, and Noah didn't ask where they were going. Ranger leaned against him the entire ride, his head resting on Noah's leg. An hour later, they arrived. The property was nestled behind a line of trees, tucked away like a secret. A long gravel driveway opened into a wide field. Fences lined the perimeter. Beyond them were kennels, a barn, and a set of low buildings. Simple, clean, purposeful. Evelyn parked and stepped out. Noah followed slowly, Ranger at his heel. "This way," she said. She showed him around without pressure. The kennels were full but orderly. Each dog had space, warmth, care. There was a training yard with cones and tunnels, agility equipment. In the barn, a pair of rescue horses blinked at them sleepily. Inside the main building, she introduced him to two young staff members, both in their 20s, both former foster kids who now worked full-time with her. "She believes in second chances," one of them, a girl named Kayla, said. "Not everyone does, but she means it." Noah nodded, unsure what to say. Evelyn led him to a small guest room, modest but clean. A real bed, a nightstand, a space heater humming quietly. "You, can stay here for now," she said. "Just rest. We'll talk more tomorrow." Noah sat on the edge of the bed. The sheets were soft. The pillows smelled faintly of lavender. Ranger circled twice before curling up at the foot of the mattress, letting out a contented sigh. Evelyn stood in the doorway. "You don't owe me anything," she said, "but I believe you have something to offer, something important." Noah looked at her. Then he looked at Ranger. Then, finally, at the room around him. Something cracked open in his chest. Not quite hope, but not fear either. Something softer, something like maybe. "We'll try," he said. Noah didn't sleep that first night, not really. He lay awake beneath soft blankets, staring at the ceiling of the guest room Evelyn had given him. The heater purred gently in the corner. The pillows smelled of lavender. And at the foot of the bed, Ranger snored softly, his belly finally full. His body curved into the familiar C-shape of a dog who no longer feared the dark. Noah kept expecting the moment to break. He had learned not to trust comfort. Too many times, kindness had turned out to be temporary, conditional, or worse, fake. Too many times, hope had turned to ash. So he stayed awake, afraid that if he closed his eyes, he'd wake up back on the street. That Ranger would be gone. That the warmth was a dream he didn't deserve. But morning came, and it didn't vanish. Instead, sunlight spilled across the hardwood floor, soft and gold. The heater kept humming. Ranger stretched, yawned, and climbed onto the bed to nuzzle. Against Noah's chest. It was real, and it kept being real. In the days that followed, Noah began to settle into the rhythm of life at Hearthstone. He didn't talk much, especially not at first. He kept his coat on even indoors. He slept with his backpack tucked under his arm. But he showed up. Every morning he helped feed the dogs, refill their water bowls, clean their kennels. Ranger was always with him, trotting at his side, never straying far. The two of them moved through the property like shadows at first, quiet, uncertain, but present. Kayla, the staff member who had welcomed him that first day, noticed. "You're consistent," she said one afternoon, handing him a leash. "Most kids aren't at the beginning. You don't disappear." "I don't have anywhere else to go," Noah replied. "Maybe. Or maybe you're just stronger than most." He didn't answer. But something in his chest shifted. Ranger, meanwhile, was healing too. His ribs became less visible. His coat slowly regained its shine. He stopped flinching when hands reached for him. He started wagging his tail when he saw Kayla or Evelyn. He learned how to play again, hesitant at first, unsure how to chase a ball or accept a treat. But with each passing day, the old instincts returned. It wasn't quick. Healing never is. Some days Noah still woke up tense, expecting it all to vanish. Some nights he flinched at loud noises. When a storm rolled in and thunder shook the sky, he hid in the laundry room with Ranger curled tightly beside him. But Evelyn never scolded, never asked too much. She just kept giving him space and structure. "You can stay as long as you need," she said. "But while you're here, I expect you to help, to learn." So he did. He watched her work with the dogs, training them, reading their posture, correcting gently but firmly. He saw how she used her voice like a guide, not a weapon, how her hands were always steady. He began to ask questions. Why does that dog bark more than the others? Why does this one cower? What does it mean when their tail's stiff but their ears are back? And Evelyn answered every time, not like a teacher lecturing a student, but like someone handing him pieces of a puzzle, one he had always wanted to solve but never had the chance. "You're good at this," she told him one morning. Noah shrugged. "I just like dogs. There's more to it than that. You see them, really see them, that's rare." He didn't know how to reply to that, but he remembered her words. One afternoon, after a long morning walk with Ranger and 2 other dogs, Evelyn approached him in the field behind the kennels. She was holding 2 mugs of tea, one of which she handed him without a word. They stood in silence, watching the sun stretch its light across the grass. The air smelled of hay and earth. "I read your intake form," she said finally. "No last name, no emergency contact, no address." Noah looked down at his boots. "I don't need to know everything," she continued, "but I want you to understand something. If you stay here, you're not invisible. Not to me. Not to anyone on this property." His throat tightened. "I'm not used to people wanting me around," he said almost inaudibly. "Well, we want you here, and so does Ranger." As if on cue, the dog looked up at Noah, ears perked. Evelyn smiled. "Do you know what you did for him?" Noah frowned. "What? Do you mean? That dog was trained once, I can tell, but someone broke him, badly. He hadn't let anyone touch him in over a year, not until you." Noah's eyes widened. "You reminded him how to trust," she said softly. "And I think he did the same for you." A breath hitched in Noah's chest. He looked down at Ranger, who was now lying at his feet, eyes closed, tail thumping lazily against the grass. That night after dinner, Evelyn handed him a folder. Inside was an application, a paid internship, a training program, education support, in animal behavior and rehabilitation. "You don't have to decide tonight," she said, "but I think you and Ranger have more to give, and I'd like to help you find out what that is." Noah stared at the papers. The words didn't feel real. "You think I can do this?" Evelyn nodded. "I know you can." He looked at Ranger. The dog raised his head and nudged Noah's elbow gently, as if to say, "We're ready." Noah's voice was barely above a whisper. "Okay, we'll try." And just like that, the boy who had once slept beside a dumpster with nothing but frost in his lungs and an old blanket for company took his first real step toward a future. Not a miracle. A beginning. Spring arrived quietly at Hearthstone. There were no grand announcements, no parades of color, just the slow bloom of cherry trees by the driveway, the thawing earth underfoot, and the gentler breeze that no longer stung the skin. But for Noah, spring wasn't just a season, it was a turning point, a quiet revolution. He no longer slept with his coat on. He didn't keep his backpack in reach at all times. He laughed, sometimes. Spoke, more often. And every morning he woke before dawn, not out of fear, but out of purpose. Ranger was no longer gaunt or wary. His coat had thickened, gleaming in the sunlight. His eyes were sharp, his movements agile, his limp nearly gone. He walked with Noah like a partner, like a protector, like a friend who had chosen to stay. Noah wore a name badge now, Noah J. Apprentice Handler. It still startled him sometimes, seeing his name printed on something official. Like the world had finally agreed he existed. He had learned more in a few months than in the last few years combined. How to read canine posture, how to correct without fear, how to train using signals of safety and trust. Evelyn's philosophy wasn't about control. It was about connection. And Noah had absorbed every word like breath. But even so, when Evelyn told him about the upcoming demonstration day, a ripple of old anxiety rose in his chest. "We're inviting the local police department and first responders," she said, laying out a flyer. "It's a public event, showcasing our dogs, our work, and I want you and Ranger to participate." Noah's stomach dropped. "In front of people?" Evelyn nodded. "You've earned this." "And he's ready." Noah looked down at Ranger, who sat beside his chair, eyes alert, ears forward. The dog tilted his head slightly, sensing the shift in mood. "You don't have to prove anything," Evelyn added gently. "But this could show them who you are now, who you've become." And maybe for the first time Noah wanted that. So, they trained. For weeks, Noah and Ranger practiced in the fields, in the kennels, in the open air. Basic obedience, retrieval, calm response to stress cues, focus under pressure. But there was one command they practiced in private, quietly, at the end of every session. It wasn't part of the official checklist. It was personal, a secret they shared. The day of the demonstration dawned crisp and bright. A pavilion had been set up near the main field. Folding chairs lined the gravel path. Families, officers, EMTs, and volunteers filled the space, sipping coffee, chatting softly. Evelyn's team bustled around, guiding guests, preparing the dogs. Setting up? Noah stood behind the staging area, his palms damp. He wore his name badge, clean jeans, and a button-down shirt someone had donated. His hair was combed. His heart was racing. Evelyn came up behind him and rested a hand on his shoulder. "You okay?" He nodded, exhaling slowly. "We've got this," he said. Ranger stood beside him, tall and calm, tail low but relaxed. The dog's gaze never left. "Noah." Their turn was called. They stepped onto the field. At first, the murmurs from the crowd were a dull hum, background noise. But as Noah began, a quiet settled over the audience. He started with basic commands. Sit, stay, heel, come. Ranger obeyed each one with precision and ease, eyes locked on Noah. Then came the more complex tasks, retrieving a dropped glove, responding to a mock anxiety signal by gently nudging Noah's hand, lying protectively at his feet without a word. The crowd watched, quiet and intent. Then Noah paused. He turned to the audience, his voice clear but soft. "Ranger isn't just a trained dog. He's a survivor, and so am I." The words felt strange in his mouth, too big, too honest. But he kept going. "When I met him, we were both freezing, starving, and forgotten. I gave him a blanket, he gave me everything." A hush fell over the field. "We don't always get to choose where we come from," he said. "But we get to choose who we become. And we chose each other. We became family." He took a breath. Then softly he gave the final command. "Hug." Ranger rose on his hind legs and gently placed his front paws on Noah's shoulders. He leaned in, nuzzling into the boy's neck, his body still, trusting, steady. For a moment time stopped. Then the crowd erupted. Applause, cheers, even a few tears. Some stood. Some clapped slowly, reverently. Evelyn wiped her eyes, and in the front row, a police officer in uniform stood and clapped harder than anyone. Noah stepped back and gave Ranger a soft pat. The dog dropped down, tail wagging gently, then pressed against Noah's leg as if to say, "We did it." Later, as the guests began to leave and the sun dipped lower over the fields, Evelyn found Noah sitting on the wooden fence near the barn. Ranger lay across his lap, eyes closed. "You were incredible today," she said. Noah looked up, his expression soft, almost bewildered. "I think," he said slowly, "for the first time, I believe I'm supposed to be here." "You are," Evelyn said without hesitation. He looked down at Ranger and smiled. "And he saved me." "He did," she agreed. "And now you're saving others every day." The wind rustled the tall grass. The sky was painted in strokes of peach and lavender. Stars were beginning to peek through. In that quiet, Noah let the stillness wash over him. He wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. He wasn't looking for an exit. For once, he wasn't just surviving. He was home. The days that followed the demonstration settled into a new rhythm, not one of survival, but of purpose. Each morning, Noah woke with the sun. He fed the dogs, walked the trails, learned new cues and techniques. Ranger was at his side for every step. They moved like two halves of one soul, no longer wounded but strong in the places they had once been broken. Evelyn's home had become something neither of them had dared to wish for. A sanctuary. Noah was still quiet, still careful. But there was light behind his eyes now, and a steadiness in his hands. He no longer flinched at kindness. He accepted it, slowly, cautiously, but he let it in. One evening, as the last light slipped behind the trees and the barn doors creaked shut, Noah sat on the porch steps with Ranger stretched across his feet. The dog was dozing, his ears twitching, at the soft calls of crickets in the grass. Noah looked out across the field. He thought of that first night, the bitter cold, the shredded blanket, the silence of a city that had pretended he didn't exist. He thought of Ranger shivering under a street lamp, ribs sharp beneath filthy fur. They had been lost then, invisible, dismissed. And now? Now Ranger was healthy, confident, trusted by strangers to comfort those in distress. And Noah, he was learning to speak up, to believe that he had value beyond what he could endure. He was learning that healing wasn't a moment. It was a practice, a series of quiet choices. Every time he said yes to being seen, every time he showed up, every time he told his story, he was choosing life. Evelyn joined him on the porch holding 2 mugs of tea. "Spring looks good on you," she said with a smile. Noah chuckled softly. "I'm still getting used to it." She handed him a folded sheet of paper. He unfolded it and blinked. It was a schedule, his name at the top, a formal offer to extend his internship into a mentorship program, with a future path toward certification as an animal behaviorist. Noah looked at her, stunned. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," she replied. "Just keep choosing this." He nodded, his throat tight. As the stars began to scatter across the night sky, Ranger stirred and rested his head on Noah's lap. The boy reached down and scratched behind the dog's ears. "We made it, didn't we?" The dog sighed as if in agreement. They had not only survived, they had transformed. Together. And their story wasn't over. Not even close. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more. Because sometimes the smallest act of kindness, a blanket on a freezing night, a gentle touch, a quiet okay, can change a life forever. In the next episode, we'll follow Noah and Ranger as they face their biggest challenge yet, a mission that could put everything they've learned to the test. Stay tuned.